Welcome back to another episode of Running with Wolves, you guys. I hope you are ready to get out your pens and pencils. I hope you are ready to take a bunch of notes because today we are going to do a pretty lengthy episode all about the different mistakes that I see people making when they are trying to stand out from their competitors. And we are also going to talk about all of the things that you should be doing in your marketing to stand out in a saturated market and create a ton of sales. Because this is something I've been pretty consistently hearing in my DMs that you guys are struggling with is like, I was first to market, or I joined this industry and there's like a ton of top dogs and I just feel like it's going to be absolutely impossible for me to stand out, to scale my business, to be successful if they're getting all of the clients. Because I know we can all relate to that like gut punch feeling when you're scrolling through Instagram and you see someone else selling your product or your service, but with a different name and not as much support, or the product isn't as good, and they're getting a ton of engagement, a ton of clients, all the buzz, and you're like, this brand started after me, right? That coach learned from me. That business copied my messaging word for word. And somehow they're booked out and they're thriving and they're getting all the customers or the clients while you're sitting there with more experience, more knowledge, a better product, a better service, a better process that creates better results, wondering what the hell they are doing that you are not. And I have to tell my clients this pretty consistently because people are always asking me, they're like, Savannah, I'm ready to rip my hair out. I don't understand what I am not doing here when it comes to my product or my service. Do I need to add more support? Do I need to bring on a new product? Do I need to do any of these things? And I'm like, no. Do I need to lower my price, right? The thing that I tell my clients is that the reason why people are buying from your competitor, people are telling you that your product or service is too expensive, you're getting ghosted, and their competitor, even though they have less experience, their results aren't as good, product or service isn't as good, the reason why they're getting all of the success is because they have better marketing than you. People will not buy the best product or invest in the best service. People will buy or invest in the best marketing. And trust me, I know this better than anyone because I work with clients of very similar industries, right? It's rare that I'll get a client where I've never worked with their industry. And I've worked with almost every business model, almost every industry, like you name it, I've probably worked with those people and multiple people in their industry. And it's actually insane because I'll look at one of my clients' marketing who, maybe has taken the strategy I've given them and is implementing it consistently over and over and over again, always asking me, how can I refine? How can I get better? Blah, blah, blah. And I'll look at another person who maybe isn't as consistent in that industry, who's, isn't implementing the strategy I gave them or something like that. Same industry, same strategy. One is just not being implemented as well as the other one is. And immediately that client is the one that's going to get the sales, whether it's customers, whether it's clients, or something that's also happened, which is crazy, is that I have literally had people in my DMs who are like, I just lost this client in my DMs to a competitor. I don't know who it is. Just lost this client, this client, this client. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was talking with my client about getting that client for them, what marketing they should put out, what they should say in their sales conversation, things like that. And they're the one who won the sale, not the other person in my DMs who hasn't worked with me yet, right? The people with the best marketing are the ones who are going to land the sale, not necessarily always the ones with the best product or the best service. If that was the case, the world would be a very different place and it would be wonderful because the people who genuinely deserve to see sales would be the ones who would. But unfortunately, if you can master the right marketing, tell people what they need to hear to buy, you're going to get those sales. So we are going to talk about the mistakes you're making in your marketing that are making it so you're losing out on sales to your competitors, making it so you don't really stand out in your industry. And we're going to talk about what you should be doing. And before we get into those biggest mistakes, the only other reminder that I want to leave you with is that everyone and their mother, when they're not seeing sales, loves to blame the market, loves to blame the algorithm, loves to blame the economy. But the reality is that someone in your industry is winning those sales, and it's because of their marketing. So if someone else is winning and you're really struggling, or other people in your industry are doing really well and you're struggling, you can't always blame the economy. You can't always blame the algorithm. You can't always blame the market, because they're scaling despite all of those things and you're not. So that's not the common denominator, right? Saturation, you have to remember, in your industry isn't a death sentence. I had a client who actually started their business, and they were probably one of the first people to do it. And then they ended up basically training their competition with their clients. And she came to me and she was like, I don't know what to do. I feel like my industry is really saturated now, and I kind of created this beast. Is it going to get to the point where I am not bringing in sales? I'm not bringing in clients because I've trained my competitors? And I was like, no, because your marketing is going to be the best of them all. And that's exactly what happened, right? She still maintained the level of sales that she was making because she had the best marketing. But you have to remember that saturation in an industry is not a death sentence. It's proof that there's demand. It's proof you can get clients. It's proof you can get customers. What kills your sales is not the crowd, is not how many competitors you have. It's the fact that your messaging blends in. It's the fact that if I lined up 10 of the same brands and businesses as yours, same industry, same business model, product, service, target audience, doesn't matter, and I looked at all of their messaging, I couldn't pick you out of that crowd. That is the thing that kills your sales. And honestly, that's kind of the part that most people don't want to admit, unfortunately, because it's so much easier to say oh, well, there's just too much competition. I can't get, a word in edgewise. I can't get clients. I can't get customers. Than to say, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe my strategy isn't right. Maybe I'm not executing properly. And listen, I get it. You should be the one, like I said, right off the bat, that's getting all of the sales, all of the clients, all of the customers, if your product or service is the best one on the market. I get how frustrating that can be. But because of that, it is your responsibility to learn how to refine your marketing. Because if your audience doesn't understand what makes you the obvious choice out of all of your competitors, if they can't see themselves inside of your content, or they can't connect the dots between your product and their problem, they're going to scroll right past you, and they're going to buy from someone who does make them feel seen, who does make them feel included, who does make them recognize that that's the solution that they need. And guess what? They're going to invest in a subpar product or service, get burned by that investment because that person had better marketing, but the product or service didn't live up to it, and then be the one that's skeptical of making that purchase or that investment again. And then you're going to have to clean up those pieces and overcome those objections. So if you want your sales process to be easier, if you want to make more clients, more customers in a saturated industry, it is your responsibility to clean up your marketing, to dial it in, to refine it, so it creates those leads and those sales for you, by getting you to stand out from the crowd, by getting them to see your product or service as the solution to their problems, and by making it so that they recognize they can't live another day without it. Because that is not luck. That's a marketing strategy. So let's get into really the biggest mistakes that I see being made pretty consistently across the board when it comes to marketing in a saturated market, selling a product or service in a saturated industry. So let's start with some real talk really quick, right? Because when I say saturated market, what I usually hear underneath from people who tell me, oh, it's hard to sell in a saturated market, or there's too many people in my industry, I can't get a word in edgewise, blah, blah, blah. What I usually hear is, when I ask more questions, I don't know how to get people to choose me, my brand, my business, my product, my service. And that's not a product problem. That's a marketing problem, right? So let's go through those biggest mistakes that I see business owners making when it comes to standing out from the crowd. So mistake number one, and I see this all the time, and this is the main question I ask people, is what the fuck does that mean? right? Your mistake is that you are trying to be different in the name of standing out from the crowd. And because of that, you are unclear in what your brand or business promise is. Everyone is so obsessed with standing out from the crowd, like I said, that they end up saying abso-fucking-lutely nothing, right? I will look at people's content and I'll be like, well, it sounds sexy. I love the language you used, but like, what the fuck does that mean? And here's the thing is like, I will have kickoff calls with clients where I'll go to their profile, I'll go to their website, I'll go look at their emails. I'm like, I purposefully, when I audit people's marketing, because I have them fill out like an onboarding form when they start working with me, that tells me everything about their business, tells me everything about their brand. A lot of times I already know a lot of this just from the conversations that we've had before they started working with me. But I purposefully don't look at their onboarding form when I go and I look at their marketing, because I want to look with a fresh eye of like, if I know nothing about your brand before coming into contact with it, is it clear what you do? Is it clear what your product or service is? Is it clear why you're different from your competitors? Oftentimes I'm like, I don't fucking know what you do, right? They chase really clever copy, aesthetic trends, and like unique angles that make sense in their head, because you know everything about your brand, you know everything about your business. So of course it makes sense to you. But when your audience comes into contact with that, again, they're like, cool, what the fuck does that mean, right? They're playing this like creative director when you should be playing strategist. You don't need to like reinvent the wheel when it comes to copy. What I always tell my clients is you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to explain why yours rolls smoother. So an example of this is like a skincare brand, for example, right? And in their marketing on their website, they keep saying, we're redefining confidence, or we empower women through self-care. And I will read that and I'm like, are you a candle company? Are you a makeup brand? Are you a skincare brand? It could be fucking anything at that point, right? But the reality is, and what people I don't think actually understand about marketing, is that no one is sitting there Googling skincare brands that empower confidence, or skincare brands that empower women through self-care, or redefine confidence. No one is searching for that. They're Googling how to get rid of my hormonal acne, or how to age gracefully, right? Like I know for me, I'm looking for products right now that are combo, which is so stupid and weird, by the way, being in your late 20s. I just turned 28. And I'm like, since when do I have to get Botox and still use retinol for acne at the same time? Like, why are we here? What's happening? Anyways, so that's what I'm Googling when I'm looking for skincare products. I'm like, skincare products that get rid of wrinkles and acne all at the same time, right? So you have to recognize that you're not losing out on sales as a skincare brand because your serum doesn't work. I could honestly have the best skin of my life using your skincare products, but I wouldn't know that because I can't recognize myself in your marketing, because there isn't anything. And by the way, hold on, let me pull some stats on this. We're doing this live in the podcast episode. We're going off script here. How many seconds do you have to grab someone's attention with content when they are scrolling? Because this is an important part that I need you guys to understand. You have, this is according to, let's see, here are my sources. Marketing Essentials Lab, Buffer, Work, all of this basically comes, Entrepreneur. Okay, so we've got some good sources here. You have 1.7 to 3 seconds to grab someone's attention while they are scrolling through content. 1.7 to 3 seconds. Let's count that. 1, 2, 3, scroll. If someone does not know what the fuck you do and they come into contact with your brand for the first time and you're saying shit like, oh, well, we're redefining confidence, do you think they're going to buy from you? No, didn't think so. They're going to be like, cool, sounds nice. I would probably pin that on my inspirational quotes board on Pinterest. Scroll. They're not going to purchase your skincare from that. Or as a service-based business, let's say you're, a graphic designer, right? And you say, I help you build a brand that feels like you. I actually just had to give this feedback to a new client who I have, who owns a marketing she owns a graphic design, brand strategy, website agency, all that good stuff. I had to go through her content and her website, and that was my number one feedback. I'm like, what does this mean, right? That doesn't mean anything to someone who's stressed that their business looks like they built it in Canva, right? You can say, I help 6-figure business owners, or I help 7-figure brands who outgrew their Canva logo look like the $1 million brand they've already built. That is clarity in what you do, and clarity converts way faster than creativity ever will. Okay? So, mistake number 2, selling your thing, i.e. your product or your service, instead of selling the solution. You guys hear me talk about this a lot, but apparently there's some confusion around it. Nobody's buying your product or your program. They're buying what it does for them. I don't think you guys get this into your head, and I'll give you some examples in a second. The reason why most people struggle in a crowded industry is because they're too focused on what they do. You get this many calls with me per month. You get this many rounds of edits. You get this many sessions. I'll give you a meal plan on top of that. You get your labs done at the same time, right? And you guys are so focused on creating that content and talking about that in your marketing. No one gives a fuck about that unless you have super analytical buyers. Then maybe they'll care about it, but that's not the only thing that they care about. They're not looking at the deliverables unless they know what the solution is of the product or the service. They're not going to look at what all it comes with unless they recognize the impact it's going to create for them in their lives, their health, their business, right? So I'll give you another example, a product-based business. Let's say you sell candles, right? If you are selling candles, you're not selling that candle specifically. You're selling the calm after a chaotic day, right? You're selling fall in a freaking jar, right? I have candles. My boyfriend and I just had this argument the other day. He was like, how much have you spent on a candle before? I'm like, oh, from Anthropologie, I have probably spent like $50 minimum on a candle. If you want a big one, it's going to be like $100, right? And he's like, why? It's this, like, you could literally go to TJ Maxx or like Home Goods and go to the candle aisle and get the exact same stuff. And I'm like, no, their marketing just does it for me. Number one, it's the scent. But then number two, I'm like, when Anthropologie puts out their candles, their marketing gets me every fucking time, especially for the holidays, and I will spend way more money on that because it's top of mind for me and they stand out versus the convenience and the lower price point of just going to Home Goods, right? You're not selling planners. You're selling the feeling of getting your shit together again. You're selling the feeling of a fresh year, getting ready to like kick ass and knowing you're completely organized and you have an entire plan of ways that you're going to become this new version of yourself. If you have a service, you're not selling a marketing strategy. You're selling the ability to take a day off without your revenue disappearing. You're not selling photography, right? You're selling the confidence that your clients feel when they finally look like the level they're playing at. When you sell the outcome, that's all people care about. The features, the ingredients, that is all a byproduct. That's all second to them. They have to know, like, they're not even going to consider looking into your product or your service unless they can envision their life or their business being impacted by your product or your service. And honestly, that's when people stop shopping around, stop like price shopping. It mitigates so many objections and hurdles in the sales process when you sell the impact, sell the solution. Mistake number 3, thinking consistency equals strategy. This is something I see a lot. Because let's be honest, you guys are consistent. You are posting all the time. And if that was the thing that was going to create results, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast episode or watching it if you're on YouTube. You've got the content calendar, the batching days, the reels, the carousels, the emails. In fact, you're probably feeling fucking burnt out with your marketing because of how consistent you are with little to no results, right? The needle's not moving. But half of the marketing you're putting out is reactive. It's not thoughtful. It's not intentional. It's not strategic. And so because of that, you put the content out and you get 20 likes and no link clicks. You don't get any website traffic, any sales, no nothing. And it's because you're not being strategic. You get this dopamine hit by like doing the check on your checkbox of like, okay, I posted on Instagram today. Like me, I click off all of the things I completed on my ClickUp task list. I'm like, did my feed, did my TikToks, did my stories, did my top of funnel reel. Boom, I marketed. No, you didn't. Because if you can't tell me how each of those pieces of content is going to get you to stand out from your competitors and get people to buy from you, all you're doing is posting content for fun. 13-year-olds do that on TikTok. I see them dancing on the side of the street with their phone stuck up with their Octobuddy, okay? You're the same as them unless you have a strategy. Sorry, not to yell at you. Consistency doesn't always mean posting every single day. It means showing up with a clear goal, a clear message, a clear strategy, and a clear next step for your buyer in your content. So for example, as a product-based business, let's see you post your new drop, your customer reviews, your packaging, but your customer has no idea why they need it or how it fits into their life, right? You're creating awareness, but you're not creating conversion, okay? Service-based businesses, you post mindset content, a few client wins, maybe a launch story, but your audience does not know how all of those things connect together. They can't tell what problem you actually solve, so they assume it's just not for them. Posting without strategy is, again, just creating content. You're literally the same as the girls on the side of the street doing TikTok dances. And in a saturated market, that is going to get ignored time and time again. Mistake number 4, talking about yourself instead of your audience. This is something that I see happening a lot as well. And this one can be silent but deadly. All right, you guys, real talk for a second. I'm pausing the episode because odds are, if you are listening to this episode, you probably are in a position where you're hovering in the income range of 10 to 40K in sales per month. You've probably posted the same call to action 3 different ways this week and still gotten crickets from your content. You've tried lead magnets, you've tried master classes, you've discounted your products or your services, you've tried to post value content, and nothing sticks. Sales still feel random to you, and you're constantly guessing what you need to do in order to make 10K more in sales like you did last month and actually scale rather than staying at the same income level. You're not here to scale slow or wait around for the algorithm to just like bless your video and make it go viral. You want a business that sells on command, and that comes back to your marketing. And if you're listening to this episode, odds are, whether it be your marketing or your sales, you're kind of at a loss for what you need to do next in order to hit your goals. And that's exactly what I do within the Accelerator program, specifically Tier 1. I work with business owners who make between 10K per month, 15K per month, all the way up to like 40K per month to get you off of that fucking income roller coaster and help you identify exactly what your audience needs to hear so that every single day you have leads and sales coming in the door just from the content that you put out on your feed like you're doing right now. So within Tier 1, you get to actually plug into the same step-by-step framework that has literally generated over 14 million in client sales in the last 3 years. You get my custom strategic advice on your marketing and sales every single week in Slack, in group calls, where I'm basically telling you, hey, here's exactly what you need to post in order to see sales so that you can actually scale and have that clarity of how to bring in predictable leads and sales. If you want to join this community and have me in your back pocket giving you custom strategy advice on exactly what to post day in and day out to not only hit your sales goals, but be able to double, triple, quadruple your revenue, I want you to DM me just the word accelerator on Instagram so that I'll know that you came from the podcast and we can talk about what the best support options are for you to help you hit and exceed your goals. All right, let's get back into the episode. Bye, guys. A lot of times your content will sound like a journal entry, or I'll always say it's like your treadmill or your shower thoughts, right? That's not going to get people to buy from you. You're saying, here's what I believe, here's what I learned, here's what I value. Reminder, your audience needs to see themselves in your marketing. It needs to be about them. What I always tell my clients is what warms people up, what gets people obsessed with you and gets you to stand out from your competitors is all about you, right? Again, your unique thoughts, processes, all those things. What gets them to buy is all about them. their problems, their goals, how they're living that on a day-to-day basis, their buyer types, concerns, objections, and how your product or service solves all of those things, okay? So for example, if you're a product-based business, instead of quote unquote saying like, oh, I started this jewelry line because I couldn't find elegant pieces that last, flip it. And instead you should be saying you're tired of your favorite necklace turning your skin green by the second month of wearing it. You want something timeless that doesn't tarnish. Or if you're a service-based business, right now, you're probably saying, oh, I built my business to give women freedom. And instead of saying that, you want to flip it on its head again and say you're exhausted from being the bottleneck in your own business. You want to scale without sacrificing your sanity. Your audience does not need to understand you. They need to feel understood by you, okay? Mistake number 5, and then we're going to go into kind of like what you should be doing instead. Ignoring the buyer psychology behind your content. Excuse me. You are literally trying to sell to everyone, their mother, their grandmother, their cousin Steve, with one blanket message. And that's why no one is buying from you. Okay? There's the emotional buyer who needs the proof. Well, hold on. There's the logical buyer who needs the proof, the emotional buyer who needs the connection, the intuitive buyer who needs that alignment, and the spontaneous buyer who needs urgency. There's 4 different buyer types. They all take different things into consideration when they're making a purchase or an investment. And right now, you're not marketing to really any of them, or you don't know the buyer types that make up your audience, right? Typically, most people's target audiences have like 1 or 2 buyer types in them. And you, if you do market research or you look at your data, should be able to tell what kind of buyer type your audience is. And you need to be putting your marketing and even your sales conversations through that lens. If your marketing does not speak to your buyers, you are missing sales every single day. For example, for a product-based business, logical buyers might need to see the materials, sourcing, ingredients, strength of the ingredients. Emotional buyers want to feel a story. They want to feel like there's a part of something bigger, why it matters. Intuitive buyers need to trust your brand values. And spontaneous buyers need a reason to act now, what they could be missing out on, what they could have if they purchased that product. Again, could be limited stock, fast shipping, exclusivity, doesn't matter. If you're buying or if you're selling a service, logical buyers want data and frameworks. Emotional buyers want client stories, and they don't just want results. They want to know like, what was your support like with those clients throughout that story? Intuitive buyers, they want to feel a vibe. So this could look like, I just want to get on a call and vibe check with you, right? That's how you know you have intuitive buyers. Spontaneous buyers need a deadline. They need that urgency. And once you start selling to the buyer types that your target audience is comprised of, your saturated market turns into like a multi-lane highway of opportunity because you've got so many different shortcuts that you can take, okay? So when people tell me like, oh, I'm doing all of the right things, but I'm just in a really crowded space, I always say, no, you're doing things. You're doing things. You're marketing. You're selling. But you're not doing the right things. You're not doing them correctly, okay? Because the truth is that the market does not decide who wins. The messaging does. I have literally had people come to me where they're like, I created the first product in this industry, or I came out with the first service in this industry, and now I'm people's last option, basically, on the list. Like I have so many other people who have half of my experience, who've been in the market half, if not less than I have. And I can't create sales like I used to because, again, the market doesn't decide. They just had better messaging. So let's break down what that should look like, what it actually takes to create sales at scale, even when everyone else is selling something similar. Because yes, it absolutely can be done. Because let's be honest, the question you have to ask yourself, because honestly, if you're in a saturated place, that's actually not a bad thing. Remember, it shows that there's demand, right? It means you're in a proven market with money on the table, with sales to make. That's like the best place to be in as a business owner, right? The question isn't like, oh, is there demand? It's why are they buying from me, right? And 9 times out of 10, the reason is that you're talking about what you do or what you sell, not positioning it so people can't unsee it, right? I always tell my clients, I'm like, I want you to be unavoidable. I want you to be fucking everywhere. I want people to literally not be able to stop thinking about your brand or your business from your marketing. So let's talk about what actually creates sales when everyone is selling something similar. Number 1, consistent visibility with strategy behind it. Okay? I mean it. Visibility is not about posting more. It's about posting intentionally. For example, I did a challenge a couple years ago where I was consistently doing 3 TikTok videos per day, but I was like, wow, I've been doing this for a year. I feel good about it. If it gets me these results, if I do double that amount per day, would it double my sales? So literally for, I think it was 30 days, I did 6 TikToks per day. And the volume didn't actually create more results for me, because what I actually found was the more videos I was trying to pump out, the less strategic and intentional I got. So I went back to 3 TikToks a day, and that's always been I would say golden number for us. But it just goes to show it's not about posting more. It's about posting strategically and intentionally. It's not about being everywhere on every platform. It's about being unforgettable where it counts. You can't be the industry's best kept secret and expect to create a shit ton of sales. It just doesn't work like that, right? So for a product-based business, you are a jewelry brand that's tired of relying on drop announcements, right? Instead, you start posting behind the scenes clips showing the design process, telling stories about what inspired each piece, the meaning behind it, the messaging behind it. And on top of that, featuring customers styling them with their outfits every single day. So there's social proof. And suddenly your content, and trust me, I've had a client with a jewelry brand just like this, goes from I'm getting good views, I'm going viral, and no one's buying from me. And suddenly their content isn't just oh, new collection is out now. It's a story about the brand that people want to be a part of. And it's the products take on more meaning than just a jewelry brand, right? A service-based example. A business coach who stops fighting for visibility on Instagram alone and stops putting all of her eggs in one basket, right? She starts leveraging TikTok and YouTube, short and long form platforms that let her show her thought process, case studies, client transformations. And within weeks, she's building visibility, authority, conversions, not just algorithm visibility, not just going viral. Visibility, when you think about it, whether it's paid ads, organic content, doesn't matter, is only valuable when it's engineered to create demand, not just awareness. Otherwise, you might as well just post cute dog videos on TikTok and go viral if you don't want to create sales. Number 2, specificity that creates recognition. You cannot convert a confused audience, you guys. Remember that. If people cannot recognize themselves in your content, we just talked about this, within 3 seconds, you have already lost them, okay? Specificity isn't just oh, well, I know my niche, I know my target audience. It's speaking your buyer's language better than they can. So you have to use their exact language back to them. You have to talk about their exact experiences, how they're living that on a day-to-day basis, what that looks like to them. So for a product-based business, as an example, instead of saying these are the perfect daily vitamins for women every single day, you should be saying, for women who live on cold brew, skip breakfast, and still want energy by 3 p.m., you need to be supplementing with these vitamins. It's not you just saying words. It's clarity about specifically who you're talking to and what they want and what that looks like to them, and plugging that product as that solution. A service-based example, a photographer who stops saying, oh, well, I help women feel confident in front of the camera. No one gives a fuck, okay? They don't see themselves in that marketing. You can start saying, oh, I help 7-figure founders finally look as powerful online as they do in their business. That is not generic. That photographer is now the answer to their problem, which is, oh, I have created a ton of success in my business, but all of my marketing looks like I just filmed my content in my car, right? Number 3, selling the solution, not the product or the service. Reminder, here is the golden rule. People will buy how their life, business, health, relationships, beauty, skin, doesn't matter, will feel when they own your product or your service. They will buy the impact of it that it will have on their life. It's framed around, if your content is all features and deliverables and logistics, you are pretty much educating people into being turned off by your content, right? You have to remember it's framed around transformation. You have to activate desire. So for a product-based example, let's say a company sells planners and they stop talking about the thickness of their paper and the shipping speed. And they really start showing the emotional payoff of these planners, right? Which is, this planner is for the woman who wants to go from I'm so behind on everything to I'm so on top of everything in my life. That sells the results, not the notebook. A service-based example. So let's say a social media manager stops selling quote unquote content creation and starts selling you never have to think about what to post or if the post went out again. That is the solution that people pay for. The more you connect what you do to what your audience wants to feel, you never will need to discount your services, to incorporate a new offer or service into your marketing or into your product suite. People will just straight up buy from you, from your marketing. Number 4, selling to buyer types. Most people only know really how to sell to one buyer, which is like the logical one, right? But that's pretty much maybe only 25% of your audience. Could just be like 0% of your audience. You could just not have logical buyers. If you want to scale in a saturated industry, you have to learn to speak to the buyers in your audience and identify who they are, okay? So logical buyers, remember, they need data and reasoning. Emotional buyers need connection and story. Intuitive, they need alignment and trust. And then spontaneous buyers need urgency and energy. They're that like, fuck it, I'm in, like almost I call them our QVC, like infomercial buyers, right? The funny example I've given before is that my dad used to stay up really late at night because he used to have a really hard time sleeping. And my mom literally at one point had to take his credit card away from him because he'd get so sucked into those infomercials that were like, and if you buy right now, call the number on our screen. We've got a special deal for you, blah, blah, blah. She'd be like, okay, you're done. You're not allowed to have your credit card at night because you're purchasing things that like we don't actually need. That is an intuitive, that's a spontaneous buyer for sure. And if you're confused about who the buyers are in your target audience or how to figure that out or how to sell to them, I have an entire other podcast episode that speaks to the 4 buyer types as Sex and the City characters. And even if you don't watch Sex and the City, I still explain all of it. But it was one of the first episodes we ever did for Running with Wolves, and it's still one of the most popular. So make sure you go listen to that one. So as a reminder, for if you're a product-based business and you have logical buyers, highlight your materials or your results. You can talk about clinically tested, it lasts 10 times longer, so on and so forth. Like if you're selling a candle to super logical buyers, you can say like burns for 10 hours longer than your average candle or something like that, right? Emotional buyers, tell customer stories about what changed for them. Again, the context there is the important part. Intuitive buyers, show your values, sustainability, craftsmanship, community, and then spontaneous buyers drop limited edition runs and countdowns. If you're a service, for logical buyers, explain your process, frameworks, how you get better ROI than Sally down the street, your competitor. If you have emotional buyers, share real client stories, the befores and afters, right? If you have intuitive buyers, show that your energy matches theirs through tone and positioning. And if you have spontaneous buyers, create that urgency around what they could miss out on if they don't buy now or what they could have if they do buy now. Bonuses, start dates, deadlines, all that good stuff. When your marketing speaks your buyer's language, you stop getting like, oh, I need to think about it. And you literally straight up just start getting like, okay, where's the link? That all sounds great. I'm excited. Send me next steps. And then last couple ones here. So number 5, pre-handling objections in your marketing. This is super important for standing out from your competitors and standing out in a saturated market overall. If you're hearing objections on the sales call, you waited way too long to bring them up. That should have been happening in your marketing. The smarter marketers handle them in their marketing before anything ever comes up, okay? In their content, captions, emails, website, everything. Fucking everything. And then lastly, contextual social proof. So remember how I said testimonials, reviews, before and afters doesn't matter. That's not what sells. The context is, because consumers are so much smarter at this point. Okay, so much smarter. We used to be able to just slap up like a Canva testimonial in 2021 and be like, look at how amazing my client's experience was. And people were like, I want that. How do I sign up? But guess what? Since COVID and since this like burst of COVIDpreneurs, unfortunately, people with quote unquote good social proof have had good marketing that people have fallen for, and the product or service does not live up to the marketing. So then they get burned by that investment because it doesn't give them the result that they thought that it would give. And then they associate brands with social proof to brands that aren't actually going to get them results, because they're like, well, I just bought from a brand that had really good social proof. So why would this brand be any different, or this business be any different? You can't just slap up a testimonial. You can't just slap up a review. You have to give context. You can't even just really talk about client wins anymore. I need to know how. How did your product or service do that? How is it better than your competitor Sally down the street? And I need to know like the sales process that they went through, any objections or concerns. There's so much you need to be throwing into that social proof now. Like for product-based businesses, don't just show like a 5-star review that says like, oh, this candle smells amazing. Show the customer who says like, I literally used to get headaches from synthetic candles, and this one finally lets me have the cozy scent again without feeling like I'm going to get a migraine. For a service-based business, don't just say like, oh, my client hit 100K. I can't stand when people do that. Or like, oh, I'm $1 million business owner. Okay, just because you made $1 million in the past 5 years that you've been a business owner does not mean that you get to talk about that. That's why people don't trust marketing anymore. So instead of saying my client hit 100K, say after simplifying her funnel, shifting her messaging from educating to selling, she closed 100K in 2 weeks with the same audience, offer, but better marketing. That is the difference between, wow, that sounds like a nice result, and holy shit, I need to work with that person. So here's the thing that most people will never admit. The businesses that dominate the saturated markets aren't always the most talented. And this is the thing you really don't want to talk about, but it's reality. They're the ones who learn how to make the market pay attention with their marketing. Because saturation, like I said earlier in this episode, is not a death sentence. It's validation. It means people want what you sell. It means there's proof of demand. It means there's money to be made if you know how to capture it with your marketing. When you stop playing small with your marketing, when your visibility is consistent and strategic, your messaging is specific, your content sells the solution, you're pre-handling objections, you put that social proof in there, you really stop like fighting for scraps and you own the market. You're the one that people look up to who are like, how the hell is she getting that, like those crazy of results? I want to be like her, because your marketing spoke for you. Clients will stop saying, or people who inquire about your products or services will stop saying like, oh, let me just think about it. And they'll start saying, great, how fast can you fit me in to start? That's when customers stop comparing prices and shopping around. They start associating your brand with like, here's the standard, right? And that's when your business stops being another option in a crowded room and becomes really like, this is what we were looking for all along. Because remember, the best product or service does not win. The best marketing does. Okay? So for those of you who have made it this far into the episode, I really hope that this was helpful, because I know that this is a huge problem that a lot of you guys are facing right now. I've heard it in my DMs consistently. So make sure, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, turn on your notifications so that every time I post a new video, you get notified. And if you're listening to this anywhere where you get podcasts, make sure that you go and you follow this podcast, set your reminders for new episodes, leave me a review if you can. And lastly, if you struggle with standing out in a saturated market, if you want help with this, head over to my Instagram, send me a message, and we can kind of chat about making sure that you can stand out, because 2026 is only going to get more ruthless when it comes to your marketing. And if you have any questions around this, feel free to send it to me in my DMs as well. Or if you want to hear anything else on the podcast, I do this for you guys, honestly. So if there's any other topics you want me to talk about, make sure you send them to me there. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.